Hey, everybody, this is Jack Hammer from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and welcome to the 49ers Throwback Show. Tuesday night, we do it every Tuesday at 5:15. And with me, as always, is my partner in crime, So Real Suneil from So Real Sports Talk TV here on YouTube. How you doing, Suneil?
Good man. I just took a picture because I realized I never I never actually like photographed the moment. And so I'm like, I need a moment with Jack on screen. So that's what you just saw me do.
There, there you go. Hey, we're big fans of each other. So now you got that. I'll autograph that for you the next time I see you, right
That's
across
it, bro. I'm gonna put it
the
on a
phone
shirt.
screen.
I'm gonna be the Kittle to your Jimmy Garoppolo, my man. You're Jimmy. I'm gonna be your George Kittle. Have that on a shirt, repping you no matter if they try to trade, sign you, waive you. I'm in your corner, Jack.
There you go. You can wear that to the next game. Next time you come up to Levi's or SoFi, whichever one you get to watch the 49ers next year. Um,
Absolutely.
Real quick before we jump into it, just want to shout out a few folks in the comment section. We have Raphael 5629ers. Raphael's great. He's always in here. Appreciate you joining us. That's awesome. And then also Big Lukey Walsh says hi, so real and Jack. How you doing, Luke? Good to have you on board with us like always. Uh, the draft just came and went, and the 49ers made a bunch of moves. They actually added 22 players over the weekend. Actually, excuse me, not 22, 23 players because they had 14 undrafted free agents that they signed as well. So a lot of changes to the roster over the last couple of days. But, kind of sticking with the draft to start off with, in your opinion, was this draft on brand for what we've seen with the 49ers this offseason, the moves they've been making?
Yeah, Jack, my answer is a resounding yes. And the reason for that, there's been, I guess, amongst the faithful, a big debate about what the 49ers should have been doing this offseason. And there's a certain school of thought that was like, you have Trey Lance, go there and go after this premium talent, very similar to maybe what the Chargers have done, what the Raiders have done, even though they don't have like a quarterback on their rookie contract. But just go after these big names, bring them in, go all in is a word that you've been, you've heard a lot, being circulated amongst the faithful. But that hasn't really been what the 49ers have done. They believe that they have the premium talent already homegrown on their roster that they've been able to draft and develop over the last five drafts. And then what they've really been looking to do is get younger at positions, get deeper at positions, and really focus on the depth aspect of their team. And this draft has shown that, where that they went after maybe not necessarily positions of need, but they went after depth at the positions that they have. So the moves that they made, usually in the first three rounds, Jack, the 49ers isolate certain positions that they feel like they need to get better at or deeper at, and they kind of reach at those positions. So in the first three rounds, you see them take an edge, which I think all of us pretty much guessed that they were going to do because they tend to do that, go trenches with their first pick, whether that be in the first or second round. Then they went after a running back, and obviously with the running game being the most important aspect of the 49ers offense, and then they were ravaged with injuries last season, it made sense that they isolated that as somewhere where they need younger, healthier bodies. So they went after a running back in the third round, and then they also got another receiver there as well. So for me, it was pretty on brand as far as what we've seen from them. Not only what they've done in the history of this regime's history of drafting, but also what their goal was this whole offseason as far as building depth at all positions, so that they're always going to be fresh and they could handle any wave of injuries that might happen throughout the year, which has always been their Achilles heel.
Yeah, it's this draft when I look at it, there's a lot of what you said I agree with. This was a draft that was on brand for what we've seen the 49ers do in recent years, right? They went out and they got some players that they feel could help them a little bit right now, possibly, and Drake Jackson's going to have a role. Davis Price is going to have a role, and I think there'll be a role for Gray as well. And then you have guys like Burford and Womack, Zakal, and so on, who I don't know if those guys are necessarily going to, they'll have a role, but I don't think we're going to really see them on the field all that much this year. Those guys that they got from round 4 on back, I don't think, wouldn't expect to see them on the field much at all unless there's injuries. The 49ers went into this draft. I think part of what we've seen them do, part of why they weren't overly aggressive in free agency, obviously they can't because they got a quarterback who they're trying to get rid of that's taking up $27 million of their salary cap. So let's just start off there. But
allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. I mean, but part of that is also the 49ers have drafted actually pretty well when you look at it, with some of their draft picks, because now they're paying big money to the 2019 draft in particular. If you go through that 2019 draft, that's been a big help for them. They have 2 of those players are going to be 2 of the highest that they drafted that year, are going to be 2 of the highest paid players in the league. The linebacker they drafted in 2018 is the highest paid linebacker in the league now. They have the highest paid left tackle. They have the highest paid tight end in the league because that's the guy they drafted in 2017. So when you look at the way that this team is constructed, if they had gone out and spent a bunch of money in free agency, then you're limiting yourself to what you can do with Deebo Samuel and also Nick Bosa, because those are guys who are going to have big contracts who, obviously the first year or 2 isn't going to be that big. But it's going to grow. And if you have that money built, going to an older guy who isn't really in your long-term plans, you might not be able to get those deals done with 2 of your most impactful players. And so you're at the point now with the 49ers where they're going to have a few superstars, and you're going to have a bunch of guys in the lower class, meaning on rookie deals. And you're going to have a few free agents that are kind of in a middle ground, but not too many. And so we're seeing the 49ers build for the future. I put that out the other day. The draft isn't about just what can you do for me in 22. It's about what can you do for me over the next 4 years. And I feel like the 49ers did a really good job of building for the next 4 years, just like they did last season.
Yeah, and Jack, we've discussed this on this show. I believe it might have been a few weeks ago. There's a lot of 49er fans that have never seen this team be consistently good, right? They haven't seen those golden years where the 49ers were constantly one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl and constantly competing in the playoffs and that stretch of time, because for the last 2 decades, it hasn't been that way. So there's been these pockets. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh, there was a quick little pocket there. And now this regime is another regime that has turned things around to where the 49ers are now competing for Super Bowls more on a regular basis ever since the 3rd year, which is usually when you give a team that opportunity to really change a culture and whatnot. And I think that this regime is very much so not wanting to be a one and done regime where they go win 1 Super Bowl and then you just fall off the face of the map. This team wants to be consistently good. This regime wants to consistently be able to compete and win multiple Super Bowls. And although, so many people are just desperate, when you're that close, you just got to go all in and get over the hump. To me, I appreciate what this team is doing, because I don't think we're going to be dealing with a team that's missing the playoffs very often. I don't think we're ever going to have to deal with a team that just isn't good. And a lot of the mistakes that this regime made earlier on with the injury-prone players and having weak quarterback rooms and things like that, Jack, it seems like they've rectified a lot of those same issues. And those were the only reasons that was holding this team back from constantly being a contender. So I actually appreciate the about face that they've made. I like that they're going younger, healthier, and they're not just chasing the glitz and glamour, but building it from the trenches, building it homegrown, because that's the way we've seen teams like New England create their dynasty, teams like Kansas City who are always contenders, and so on and so forth. So I like it. I'm a big fan of what they're doing, and I think this team is going to be competitive for a very long time, and we're lucky to be fans of a team like this because we're going to see a lot of success from them.
Yeah, and I want to pull this comment up from Couch Chronicles. He says, anyone who knows me knows I'm stupid optimistic about the 49ers, regardless of me. Does the 49ers management have that true desire to win a Super Bowl, or are they just okay staying relevant? And I think the answer to this question is they want to win a Super Bowl. if the 49ers weren't all in on winning a Super Bowl, they wouldn't have made the move that they made last offseason to trade up to number 3 in the draft to get a quarterback. They would have just kept rolling down the road with Jimmy Garoppolo. They would have just kept, they would have redone his contract or something, whatever. They would have done something different to reduce his cap hit. But going out, there's plenty of data out there to show you that the way that teams win Super Bowls is they have really good quarterback play. You don't usually win the Super Bowl if your quarterback play is just mediocre or middle of the road. And yes, you look at the Rams and they probably shouldn't have even been in the Super Bowl if Tukowski Tart picks off a pass. But, at the same time, that quarterback went out and made a number of plays throughout the season and made a number of plays against the 49ers that helped the Rams win. And so now it's really about Trey Lance. So I don't think that I do feel like they have a desire to win the Super Bowl. They're not okay with being relevant, but they also don't want to be winning the Super Bowl one year and in the tank the next year.
Yeah, and we've seen, like, most recently a team like the Eagles. I mean, yeah, I guess the fans there have been void of a championship for so long, so there is that little bit of a high from having a Super Bowl. But I have friends that are diehard Eagles fans, and trust me, that wears off very, very quickly. Like when you're not relevant, when you're not making the playoffs, when it's all about getting back to that competitive level. And so yeah, I mean, I think that, and I said it as well. I've seen the 49ers win a Super Bowl. I was of age watching Steve Young throw 6 touchdowns against the San Diego Chargers. That one Super Bowl victory hasn't made it easy to be a 49ers fan the last 2 decades when they haven't won. Just because I've seen it happen all the years that they've missed the playoffs, all of the jokes at the behest of, being the butt of the joke of being a 49er fan over the last 2 decades, that doesn't make things better. So just because I've seen them win 1 year. So I'm much more inclined to be a fan of a team and enjoy a team that's constantly, quote unquote, relevant. But this team isn't just relevant. They're competitive. Like, they're always there. They've been in the top 4 the last 2 out of 3 years. And that inconsistency in quarterback play has been one of the biggest issues why they haven't been able to get over the hump. And they went all in on a young guy has that ability to play at the level, at least has that upside ability. We yet to see if he does it consistently, but he has the ability of what a Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and what a Joe Burrow and all these guys bring to their roster. So I'm glad that they did that, because we know that Jimmy doesn't have that ability. Jimmy has the ability to take a team to a Super Bowl. We've seen that. But as far as his play be the reason to elevate a team, we haven't seen that. And I don't know if that's necessarily there for Jimmy.
Yeah, I agree, and it's funny. I was chuckling to myself a little bit because you talked about having watched the one Super Bowl and then dealing with the bad times after that. Shoot, I saw 4 Super Bowls. I grew up at a time when if the 49ers didn't win 10 games in the season, it was it never did. It never happened other than 1982. But from 81 to what 9 whatever it was 96 or 7 or 90, I don't know what year it was, late in the 90s, the 49ers were winning 10 games every year. As far as I knew, that's what 49er football was about, right? They won 5 Super Bowls. And I'll tell you, for one thing, for darn sure, from like the early 2000s after Jeff Garcia, the year before Jeff Garcia left, that last year there when Mariucci let go, it was the second, and from that point on, after Mariucci, the Yorks got rid of Mariucci, it was ugly. It was awful watching 49er football until 2011 again. So I'm with you. I'd like to see this team be competitive year in and year out. I want to see them win a Super Bowl. It'd be fun to cover a Super Bowl, but it's not a situation where they can. And you've got to be able to walk a little bit before you can run. And we'll see how this all plays out. I want to shout out a couple more folks really quick. Alan joined us and he said, "Jack and Suneil, happy Tuesday." Good. Alan's a great guy. Always in here, comments, and see him afterwards in the comment section after the shows. How's it going, gentlemen? For Peter, how you doing? And then real quick, Raphael's good because he always reminds me to do this. You guys can remember to like and subscribe. That'd be fantastic. If you're new to the channel, you're watching this for the first time, you like what you're seeing, you like 49ers content that doesn't pull any punches, please hit that subscribe button and check me out. That's the way that I try to do business. So real quick, one other comment that we have here. Jay Aguayo, thank you for the donation. Really appreciate it. He says, Jack, by drafting an O-lineman with the vets we have, I think they are moving towards building a young, dominant O-line to win number 6. and will help Trey. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's about the depth, right? So I don't know if any of these guys are bona fide year one starters. I do like actually more of the undrafted guys that they got in Donovan West and Poe. But yeah, I mean, look, they're deep at all positions, and like you said, Jack, especially with the salary cap going up, if you could plug in these rookie players or on rookie contract players, it gives you a lot of flexibility to sign, premier talent that they've already drafted, or extend guys like Deebo, Bosa. But also, if there is a player that's out there that they want to go after and get, they can do that now because they have so many guys that can fill in as starters in the next couple of years that are going to be on team friendly type deals or price control type deals. And that's kind of good. I mean, if you take out that 2017 first round where they picked Solomon Thomas and went up and got Reuben Foster, if you just throw that throw that round out, after that, Jack, they've been extremely good at getting high level talent onto this. They've picked a number of Pro Bowl players and not just in the top rounds, but also in lower rounds, and they found a lot of gems in those fourth, fifth, sixth rounds that have turned in, even seventh round, that have turned into productive players that have played meaningful roles for this team, and they continue to do that. And I think when you have that ability to be able to do that, that extends the window and also makes it very easy to kind of balance a roster where you're not just top heavy with just aging veterans on very expensive deals.
Yeah, for sure. I think a group, and I like the offensive lineman. I agree with what Jay says there in terms of, we hadn't heard any of these guys until the draft. The guys that they took here in Spencer Burford and Nick Zakel, those are guys who nobody was talking about around 49. I mean, Spencer Burford might have had a little bit of run, but nobody was talking about Nick Zakel. But these guys are exactly what this goes back to our on brand for the 49ers, the way that they do business. Those are the kind of guys that they look for along the offensive line, especially in the middle rounds. A guy that can do more than one thing, that can fill in multiple spots, that has room to grow. And now it's on the coaching staff to get him up and running. But Burford has the ability to play tackle and guard. Zakel has the ability, most likely going to be a guard or maybe even a little bit of a center. And so that gives the 49ers are going to have room to grow into this, and they have guys that are really cheap for the next 4 years. And if they turn out to be starters or bigger time players for them down the road, that's really good for them. I don't know. I'm not predicting that they're going to be big time guys, but I can see a situation where maybe one of these guys is a starter in year 2 or 3. And going back to the draft really quick, if the 49ers had drafted Donovan West in round 3 or 4, people would have loved the first 3 rounds of the draft or the beginning of the 49ers draft. There wouldn't be all this complaint because they would have hit the guy that they feel like they need, right? Instead, they got him as an undrafted free agent. They still got the guy. They just didn't have to use a pick on him.
Yeah, and Jack, you've been on the forefront of this, I think, more than any other 49er creator. The offensive line, for as important as it's been, the 49ers team hasn't been necessarily that affected by not having bona fide, I guess, starters, you can say, in the offensive line. It's really come down to the ability of the quarterback play, really whether or not this team is going to win, non-existent of who's on that offensive line. I push back a little bit because I do think it affects the running game a lot more because, when the offensive line lost McGlinchey, they definitely geared more towards running down the left side, not having that ability to run down the right as much. But overall, as far as wins and losses, you're absolutely right. It didn't matter if it was a McKivitz. It didn't matter if it was a Brunskill. It didn't matter if it was a Jalen Moore or, whomever was filling in, quote unquote. The team was still winning as long as the quarterback wasn't making too many errors and Deebo was being Deebo and the defense was being as stout as they were, keeping the opposing team under 21 points a game. So I think that just having the depth there is more important to them than necessarily like first round talent.
Yeah, for sure. And then that's I like, David Hasselhoff. He took some time off the beach to come in and join the show tonight. I appreciate that. He says that third round running back for the second year in a row doesn't make much sense. And I'm going to push back a little bit on this one. The going running back in round 3, I don't have an issue with going running back in round 3. Just following along with the 49ers were doing the pre-draft visits and who they were talking to, it was pretty clear that the 49ers were going to take a running back in this draft. And given the names that they were talking about, the rankings on those guys, at least from the mock draft simulator I was using, all had them going in round 4 or 3. And a lot of them, where the 49ers draft slots were, if you were going to get them, you had to take them around 105 unless you were going to trade back up in the 4th round. And, as we saw, the 49ers weren't wanting to do that in this draft. They wanted to get as many guys as they could. For me, I don't have a problem with them taking a running back at 93. I just don't know if Tyrion Davis-Price is the guy that you spend a third rounder on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think that I think that the 49ers do a pretty good job for the most part selecting running backs. I think it's important. I think in 2019, when the rushing attack was at its peak, they had 3 guys that they could depend on, Jack. And this, obviously, now they have 3 young guys that they've picked and selected and are going to develop. Hopefully it turns out to be 3 guys that they could rotate, because I think that's very important to the success of their running game. Now, is it the change of pace guys where you have like a Coleman type guy, which, Mitchell, I guess, would be, and then you have the Breida and Mostert type change of pace backs? Doesn't look like it's necessarily that, but maybe it doesn't need to be that, right? Maybe it just needs to be 3 guys that could go out and at any point get you 80 plus yards in a game and really help average. Like, I think it's more about a running back core that could average 4.5 plus yards a carry, Jack, than necessarily having all of these home run hitters type things. Because for me, that's the thing that really was the difference between the 2019 rushing attack and then last year's rushing attack. The team without Deebo, the running back core, couldn't average that 4.5 plus yards per carry. They averaged way under that. Deebo obviously was lifted that because he was averaging over 5 yards a carry. But if this running back core can get back to averaging 4.5 plus yards, which I think these 3 guys can, maybe not with 60-yard runs, 70-yard runs like Breida and Mostert were able to do, but those punishing 5 to 8 yard rushes per carry, I think whatever way it happens, that's what's more important to me, because then you could play action. Then, they're putting 8 in the box, and now your receivers are more free to be able to be the yak bros like we've seen them do so often.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, and I understand what you're saying, I'm not going to push back on you, because that is the positive side of this. And I think why they went with the guy that they did. I said on Twitter this morning, I said that, Davis-Price doesn't give them anything that they don't have already. He's not different from Elijah Mitchell. He's a between the tackles runner like Elijah Mitchell. Doesn't have breakaway speed. He's going to get run down. You see that on his film. He's also a volume back where he doesn't really do well unless he's getting a lot of carries. So that's kind of like Trey Sermon in a lot of ways, at least when Trey Sermon was in college. Doesn't give him anything any different. And I got a lot of pushback on it, but I mean, I understand that the reason I think that they went that direction is because they needed to have a healthy back. And now they didn't get that last year out of Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell had a good year, but he had a lot of weeks where he wasn't playing. And so now they have a back that can do it. And in some ways, I'm going to tell you right now, I think the guy that's going to be their third down back is going to be Trey Sermon. That's just a guess on my part. But I think the 49ers would be better off having Trey Sermon be their third down back than JaMychal Hasty.
Yeah, and I mean, it could even be, Price could be the third down back, because both of those guys, Sermon and Price, I think are more stout in pass blocking than I think Mitchell would be. But yeah, I mean, look, we also have a brand new offensive coordinator, run game coordinator in Anthony Lynn, who I think utilizes running backs in a different way. And having these guys that could pass catch out of the backfield is going to be important as well. And, I just think it's more, like you said, about health and not necessarily, you don't necessarily need a speed guy per se especially if wide receivers are going to be wide receivers and running backs are going to be running backs, right? So, and I think that's where maybe that's where it's going to end up being.
Yeah, and the one other thing too, because I've mentioned the need of the running game to needing a home run hitter. That's why they kept. That's one of the reasons why it was Deebo Samuel so much over the second half of the year. Because here's the thing, real quick, before we get off of this topic, people keep saying that the 49ers needed to use Deebo Samuel because they didn't have enough healthy running backs. I got to push back on that because Trey Sermon was a healthy scratch or a healthy non-played running back over the second half of the season. He was playing in games. They just weren't giving him the ball. So it wasn't really about that. I think in a lot of ways, the reason you saw Deebo Samuel used as much as he was is because they needed explosion in the offense and they weren't going to get it from the quarterback. That changes this year. Now you got a guy who can throw the ball down the field, and you have receivers that can get more vertical. You've already seen that with Brandon Ayuk, and you're expecting to get that out of Danny Gray and probably even Deebo Samuel to a certain extent. That explosion out of the 49ers offense, I think, in 2022 is going to come from the quarterback position. They're not expecting it to come from the running back.
Yeah, the pass game is going to be a lot more open. So your running backs, like I said, could be running backs, and your receivers could be receivers. There doesn't have to be as much like what's that anagram where there's the 3 circles and then you have all those combined. It doesn't have to be like that, whatever that is.
Absolutely. And then I'm trying to see what this guy says. He says, so real, you say, yeah, I mean, when you start every sentence after Jack, almost like when reporters ask players questions. I'm not sure what he's getting at there, but you probably do. You probably give me a hard time. I'm just missing it.
Yeah, I think I just tend to say the same thing over and over again when I'm thinking. It is something I'm working on. Appreciate the advice, Stevo. I'll take it to heart and work on it. I'll be better.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the draft, but just real quick, do you feel like this draft was different than what we've seen in years past from the 49ers?
I do, in the sense that I believe that this has been, I think, yes, last year it kind of started the trend, but this year was like the codification. I think this team this regime definitely knows its strengths, knows its weaknesses, has a plan, and now they're executing it to the full confidence of what it is. The first 3 rounds, Jack, are going to be guys that they isolate and maybe reach for that people are going to be like questioning, right? Last year was Aaron Banks. They moved up for a guy like Trey Sermon. This year it was, Price and, getting a guy like Danny Gray. And then the bottom 4 rounds are guys that just fill in roles. I think earlier, especially you look at 2017, they were just kind of blindly going after positions. Now I think they're looking for a certain type of guy. They're not taking risks on injury-prone guys. They're looking for flexibility, guys that could play multiple positions, that could be depth, that they don't necessarily just going for home runs each time. They're just going for guys that fit their scheme, fit what they're looking for, fit their locker room. And I think this is the most confident draft that I've seen from them, as far as there wasn't any of that like trading up. They just knew what they wanted. They took what they wanted regardless of what maybe the outside world was talking about. And Jack, this was the first year where it was very hard to tell what they were going after. I think in previous years, more people were right about what they were going to go after. This year, they just kind of did their own thing. And I think that's where it's the most different.
Yeah, we're talking before the show, and I was saying that, I felt like they're very similar to what they did last year. And in a lot of ways, I think it is. There's a lot of those guys from last year were picks that they were hoping that would help them out this year. And I think you're seeing some of that with some of the guys that they've taken in this draft. Like, for example, Drake Jackson at number 2. Why do you go after Drake Jackson at number 2? Why are you going with your first pick? Why are you going after a position where you already have 11 guys that are NFL caliber players, right? And you've heard that question be asked. And it's really about the fact that when you go back and you actually look at the 49ers roster, there's only 3 of those defensive linemen that I just mentioned, as far as 11, it's under contract for the 49ers beyond this year. So they need to build up the roster again with these lower end guys. And so, yeah, I think we saw it a little bit last year too, and we see it this year. It's a very similar situation. I'm just looking really quick at the draft picks for the 49ers from 2019. You go through that list. Let's go at 2019. I'm just going to go through them real quick. Bosa, Samuel, Hurd, Wishnowsky, Greenlaw, Smith, School, and Harris. The 2019 draft, the only guy that's not with the 49ers still, the guys, excuse me, are Hurd, Caden Smith, and Tim Harris. The rest of them are with the 49ers. In 2020, Kinlaw, Ayuk, McKivitz, Warner, Jennings, all of them are still 49ers. All the guys from last year made the team. And this is a deep team. They've done a really good job of drafting over the last couple of years. And you can the Javon Kinlaw pick hasn't worked out yet to this point, but this is kind of his year, right? He's been here for 2 years. They've figured out the knee injury thing, and they feel like they've got that under control. This is kind of his make or break year, I think.
Yeah, and they've also positioned themselves that if Kinlaw doesn't work out, it's not so detrimental to this team that they're gonna feel it for the next however many years, right? So they obviously have been able to be very successful without Kinlaw playing a big role. If he's able to come in and be that guy that we want him to be, that's just a bonus. But they have guys like Hargrove that they brought in, and Hurst that's there. They have guys, Givens, that could come in and still be productive, even if he doesn't end up being the guy that they want him to be.
Yeah, and you also have the pick from UCF, Kalia Davis. I really like that kid too. And then just real quick, I know we're talking about the draft, but Health Chronicles is still talking about the big games and stuff like that. And he says Shanahan is brilliant, no doubt, but seems to fold under pressure in big games. And many of the games, it seems he plays not to lose. Is that lack of trust in Garoppolo or overthinking? I'm going to say this real quick on this one because I've seen this come up a couple times, not from you, Kelts, but just other people. If if Kyle Shanahan's quarterback hits the throw in the Super Bowl, the 49ers might win, right? I mean, he's got a wide open wide receiver. The quarterback just doesn't complete it. He's got the whatever his name is. He doesn't play with him anymore. I can't think of his name right
Mosley.
now. No, not Mosley. Emmanuel
Sanders.
He's got Sanders wide open over for a deep shot. Overthrows him, misses the throw. So is that Garoppolo? Is that how much of it do you want to blame on Shanahan? Yes, I understand. I'm with you, Kelts, in terms of they should have run the ball more. They should have done some other things more often, more in that game. And there definitely was some of it is on Kyle Shanahan, but the missed throw there. I will go with you. I agree with you. The way that they ended up the NFC Championship game, you've got to get that ball to Deebo Samuel at some point over those last couple of possessions, and you don't. And especially with how well they'd run the screen in that game. Why not get a screen out there to Deebo Samuel in the last two possessions? Just doesn't make sense. So I agree with you. I'm on both sides of that fence. I see what I did right there, Suneil. Learn from that because that is called fence sitting at its best.
Absolutely. You were able to always be right and never be wrong, right? So that's a great thing to do. For me, I think it is fair to put some blame on Shanahan, as obviously he is the final decision maker and he has made some interesting choices, when to go for it, when not to go for it, what plays to use when you're going for it. And I think we've seen a change in Shanahan as well. I think this is the most introspective version of Shanahan that we've seen. I think that he is more open to taking blame. And I think you've seen that in some of the decisions that he's made as far as his new coaching staff. And he seems to be more open into other voices. Like previous coaching staffs have always been beholden to Kyle Shanahan because their success has only been because Shanahan brought them in and developed them and so on and so forth. This is the first regime where a lot of these guys have had success outside of Kyle Shanahan. And I think that's going to bode well for that decision-making. Not saying that a guy like Anthony Lynn is known for his late-game decision-making, but having multiple voices that might not be exactly what your thought process is, that can help in those late-game moments or decision-making. And, I think that's only going to make the team better.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, and Cal brings up another one here. He says, I just hope the skittish mentality of Garoppolo doesn't create trust issues with Trey, just hoping trust and dominance. There's going to be trust issues with Trey Lance until he does everything right. It's going to be a little, and that's what they've talked about already. Shanahan and Lance have both talked about needing to get on the same page. I don't know if it's about. I'm not going to say it's trust issues, but they definitely need to get on the same page because Shanahan needs to feel like Lance has seen what he's seen.
And for all the criticism we give to Shanahan, Jack, because I know you've been critical of some of his late game decision making. We forget that this has been his only head coaching position, and in 5 years to be the type of decision maker and play caller and whatever it is to go to. And if you take even his year with Atlanta right before he got here, to go to 2 Super Bowls and an NFC Championship game within the 6 year span that was there, that's a lot of pressure, and it's going to be experience. And if you take a look at a guy like Andy Reid, who also was deemed somebody who was choking under pressure and making bad decisions in late games and so on and so forth. When he won a Super Bowl with Kansas City, and now all of a sudden nobody remembers that about Andy Reid, right? But Andy Reid was also the guy who went to 4 NFC Championship games with Donovan McNabb and only made it to the Super Bowl once and lost that Super Bowl. So a lot of the same criticism people are giving to Kyle Shanahan was the same type of criticism that was given to Andy Reid. Obviously, the Eagles let go of Andy Reid. He goes and wins the Super Bowl with Kansas City. So it's only that till he wins it. Once he wins it, then all of a sudden he's just the genius, and there's no more criticism as far as his late game or lack of late game heroics.
Hey, I mean, you look at Kyle Shanahan's first 5 years in San Francisco, and he has a better winning percentage than Bill Walsh. He's been to as many Super Bowls and lost as many NFC Championship games, and has as many losing seasons. The only difference is one really big game, but
yeah, just a little tiny differences.
There's absolutely. One of them won the Super Bowl. Come on, that's also, you got to step back a little bit because one of them had Joe Montana. I mean,
yeah, he's a pretty good quarterback.
He was okay. He was all right in his time. He was all right, I guess. Real quick, if we go past that, let's just take a look really quick. So you look at this draft class, and we're going to stick with the draft class, not the undrafted free agents, but the draft class. And I want to ask you, out of that group, which pick most likely to make a start this season for the 49ers, or maybe even a start early in the season?
So I think it comes down to 2 players, and that's either Davis Price, or Danny Gray. And I think those are going to be it, because those, I guess, is what I'm choosing, is because they seem to be the closest on the depth chart that if there's some injuries ahead of them, that they'd move up into that type of role. So that would be my guess, just based off of who I think will definitely make the roster and who would play a role that could be a starter for the 49ers.
I think it's funny because I just earlier on in the show said I didn't like the pick, but I think it's going to be most, if this group, if one of these guys starts in the first half of the season, especially, it's going to be Tyrion Davis-Price, in my opinion. I don't think Drake Jackson's going to be a starter right away. I think he's going to be more of a situational pass rusher. Danny Gray, he has a lot of development that he has to do. I really like a lot of what I see out of Danny Gray, but he only played 18 games. He's like Trey Lance last year. Only played 18 games at SMU because he was a JUCO transfer. So he has a lot of growing up to do. The good news is that he did a really good job of showing improvement during his time at SMU. So that's all good. But I'm going to say if a guy's going to start, especially early on, it's going to be Davis-Price, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you with that.
Yeah. So, don't like the pick, but at the same time I see him starting,
Both sides. I like it. Both sides. Both sides.
Because the both sides part is funny because shut up. No, but I could see it, and I can see that. I see the potential in the guy. I'm not hammering it and saying it's an awful pick. I really like what the 49ers did. So you've got to be able. You can't. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I love all the picks. So I don't love all the picks. I don't love that pick. I would have rather have seen them go with, in my opinion, a guy like Jerome Ford out of Cincinnati would have been my pick for him, because he's a guy who gives you the ability to take it, at least from what we saw in film, the ability to take it to the house and the ability to catch, right? Mm-hmm. So, you see that on film with Ford. We don't see that with Davis-Price, and there's just a lot of what Davis-Price is like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how it all works out, because I want to see his ability to get to the outside. 49er Shanahan has had success with big backs like this, though, right? He in Washington, he had Alfred Morris. and Morris 1,600 yards as a rookie and 1,300 the next year. So the good side with Davis Price, if there's one that I really want to do, make sure that people understand why this could be, is because he only had 400 carries in college. He's got his tires have a lot of tread left on them still.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure we're looking at it and saying, oh, these guys are all the same type of player when it comes to Mitchell, Sermon, and Davis Price. But opposing defensive lines aren't excited about having to deal with the fresh bruiser down after down after down, right? So it is going to bode well for this team to have guys. And I assume I'll be on the record right now, Jack, that 49ers will be top 3 in the league in third and fourth quarter rushing total yards, because I believe defensive lines are going to be extremely gassed having to deal with the punishing style of these running backs, going after Mitchell, Sermon, and Davis Price down after down after down, and you're going to start seeing big chunks of yardage in the rushing attack, 20 yards, 30 yards, be taken just because of gas defensive linemen.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet you on that because I think you might win. And then real quick, Jay, thank you again for the donation. He says, where does Jake Brendel fit into the center competition?
I'll defer to you, because I think you have been pretty advocating who you think the center is going to be. And so I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I think, well, here's the thing. I mean, nobody knows who Brendel is. He's never really started. I don't know if he's even started a game in the NFL. I don't know, his reps in games have been pretty much limited to some mop-up duty this season against Jacksonville. Other than that, it's been special team stuff on field goals and what have you. So I don't know really where Brendel fits. They kept talking a lot about him, though, so they must like him. Here's the thing real quick too. You go back to 2021 and during the draft, you after the draft was over, day one of the draft, they're talking to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch about the quarterback position and who they went with. And Kyle Shanahan goes into a long response about how he was just kind of sitting back watching everybody assume what they were going to do. And it's not about the 49ers response. It's not the 49ers responsibility to go out there and change the narrative. It's not their job to do that. They're if you're going to talk about it and just assume. And I think we might be seeing, there's something about the way that they've dealt with this draft and everything that's kind of going on. I'm not going to be shocked if Alex Mack comes back.
Yeah, and I was just about to say that. I think that Alex Mack has a very good shot of coming back. And if he does come back, they also signed 2 undrafted centers that were both supposed to be drafted, in Donovan West and Poe. And the way Poe moves, it seems like a guy that is perfect for the 49. I mean, he could run some of those type plays that we saw, Trent Williams type run. I know he's not a left tackle, but he has that same type of athleticism and big body. I saw him running routes as he was a fullback in college. I saw him run routes like he was a receiver. So I think that athleticism is going to be exciting for, Shanahan's offensive line. So I could see him making the roster. And if Alex Mack comes, maybe, a West or a Poe ends up making the 53-man roster. And maybe I don't know what Brendel's contract was, if it was fully guaranteed or what it is as far as the numbers, but maybe some of these youngsters, if Mac does come back, maybe some of these youngsters actually end up backing up him because they're trying to develop those guys to be the next in line when Mac probably retires next year, if not this year.
Yeah, and that's again, when you talk about that, that's if he comes back, like you said, with Brendel, it's they release him and there's no dead cap, so he's got a contract $1.035 million. His cap hit, though, is only $895 because of the veteran exception thing that they can do. But there's no dead cap if they were to release him. And I think, again, a guy like Donovan West, if they had taken Donovan West in the 3rd round, nobody's complaining about this draft like they're doing, because they would have addressed the center position with a draft pick. I mean, and quite frankly, Donovan West, when you looked at the mock drafts, he was a guy that was constantly taken in the 3rd and the 4th round. Right? and they were able to get him as an undrafted free agent. And you're right. If Alex Mack comes back, you've got Mack, you've got West, you've got Zakel, you've got the other Jason Poe, who I really liked. I mean, they've got a ton. Their undrafted free agent class was really strong. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch how this group comes together, this team comes together, because it's going to be as competitive a training camp as they've probably ever had in Santa Clara.
Yeah, on multiple different positions, Jack. Obviously, the offensive line we've been touching on, but a lot of those corners they brought in, the safeties, like there's going to be competition on every single level. And that's exciting because obviously the best player is going to get there. And other than the bona fide guys that we've seen and we know that are going to make the roster, all of these guys that are kind of filler, they have to be on their A game. And otherwise, who knows if they make the roster with some of these youngsters that are hungry.
Yeah. No, it's going to be a really good group, I think. And I'm really looking forward to it. I know we're starting to run out of time, but I want to hit on a couple of these other things before we close out. And it's, a couple of the guys that the Frontiers have already. We didn't even touch on one of the signings that they had recently, but how's this Jimmy Garoppolo situation going to end, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, they went after and they got the replacement in Brock Purdy. So, I mean, no, I'm just kidding. It's tough to say. I really, honestly, Jack, I'm perplexed because I do see a path where Jimmy Garoppolo is on this team and stays and is the backup. But I just don't see them cutting him straight out. I just think that would be, they've just hyped him so much, and just to cut him once he becomes healthy so that they don't have to pay that $7.5 million. I just think this team is this front office is too proud. Like Shanahan and Lynch are just too proud to be able to do that. So if they don't get a trade partner, I think they hold on to him, and I think they wait to trade him mid-season when somebody starting quarterback gets injured inevitably, like it always happens. I just don't see them cutting him. So I think he either gets traded if Carolina finally bites and wants to make a move. If not, I think he's on the roster week 1 as the backup, waiting to get traded when, an injury happens.
Okay. Really quick, Jay says, got to go. Take care. Niners, Warriors, Giants all the way. That's right. Have a good one, Jay. It's always fun talking to you. I can't disagree with you more, Suneil. There is the 49ers can make all the moves that they've made so far this offseason with Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster because of the top 51 rule. You take the top 51 rule out of it and you go to the top to the 53-man roster. The 49ers are over the salary cap right now. So unless they get somebody else, unless they go out and they get other guys to redo their deals to create some cap space, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to need to be moved. Unless they decide that they want to, I guess they could always extend Garoppolo, right? That's the only way you can get a new deal for him and lower his cap hit is if you extend him and put dead money in the future years. The 49ers have been able to make these moves because that top 51 rule breaks off at, I think, $895,000 for him right now. And everybody they're signing is falling in right around that range. So, no, I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be here. I think that if Jimmy Garoppolo is here when training camp ends and they go to 53, there's going to be some really good players that are going to have to be let go because they're not going to be able to fit them and make the cap work.
So I have 2 questions. The first question is, do you see Shanahan and Lynch, after they've dug their feet in so hard with this Jimmy praise for the last 2 off seasons, I guess you could say, you see where they could just straight out cut him? And number 2, they do have options, right? I don't know if a guy like Samson Ebicom ends up staying on the roster. They could save money on him. They have Jimmy Ward that they could extend and save some money, and Mosley that they could extend and save some money. So they do have options as far as contracts that they could play around with. But back to kind of like the first question, just knowing the personalities of a John Lynch and a Kyle Shanahan, do you see a world where they can actually cut Jimmy if they don't get trade compensation for him?
I understand what you're saying, and I think that if they do that, yes, I do see a world where I do see what you're saying, and that they might not just release him. If they don't release Jimmy Garoppolo and they try to go into the season with them on the team, they should be roasted. They should be roasted probably even harder for doing that than releasing him, because there is no reason for Jimmy Garoppolo's $26-27 million cap hit to be on this team as a backup, even though I appreciate the fact that he could be a backup. And he'd be a solid backup, better backup than any of the other guys on the roster. I do, I appreciate that fact, but you cannot re-sign Deebo Samuel right now because of Jimmy Garoppolo being on the roster. We're not hearing anything about the other guys that we're talking about, the Jimmy Wards of the world and stuff like that. They could get new deals. We're not hearing anything about it. And I think that part of the reason we might not be hearing anything about it is because they don't want to take team-friendly deals. They want to get paid. And the market's going up, and, their deal might be the same next year or whatever. They might be. I just don't see them wanting to, at this point, totally work with it. And in some ways, I don't think the 49ers want to extend Emmanuel Moseley. I think the 49ers are hoping that Tariq Castro-Fields works out and they can just move on from Emmanuel Moseley after this year. He's a guy that's really good when he plays, but he's injured quite a bit and that kind of thing. And he's going to want more money than he's making now. And so, I think that I understand that there's moves that they can make outside of just getting rid of Garoppolo, but I think it's a really bad choice for them to move forward in that direction. And I don't think they're going to when at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to keep him.
Yeah, that's going to be probably the most humbling moment that they're going to have to do, because that's where they fully miscalculated with Jimmy Garoppolo. That's like the last worst case scenario is you just have to cut a guy that took you to a Super Bowl and NFC Championship game in the last 3 years, to just cut him and get nothing out of him as far as compensation. That's the humility that I haven't seen from Lynch and Shanahan. It would be the first time. So that's why I lean more to he's here week one if he doesn't get traded.
And like John Lynch, he said this yesterday. He finally had somebody come out and just kind of, say that it was all about, they were in discussions with teams. The surgery comes up and everything just stopped. And the hope, I think the Flyers are hoping that once he can start throwing again, that those discussions are going to pick up. I think Carolina is a prime spot for him still. Carolina didn't have much to give him this year anyway. Houston, maybe New York, maybe Seattle. There's a lot landing spots potentially for him. So we'll see how that all works out. I don't think Seattle really would be a spot, but what about Deebo Samuel? How do you think that one's going to play out?
Yeah, I think this was the one that was most surprising to me, Jack. Not because of Deebo, the reports that Deebo still dug in, but more that the 49ers didn't that held strong. Right, because I think the precedent had been set where a lot of people thought, because of what they did with DeForest Buckner, that Deebo would be somebody that they're willing to trade, because the 49ers let go of premium talent if they don't want to pay him. But when you look back at that trade for DeForest Buckner, that wasn't that they didn't want to pay him. I know you've broken it down that they probably could have kept both Armstead and DeForest Buckner and if they wanted to, but in their minds, they only wanted to pay for one defensive lineman premium money. And they made the choice to pick Armstead for two reasons. I think one, because he was able to play multiple positions on the defensive line. And the second one is, I think DeForest Buckner on the to the rest of the league could demand a higher draft pick than Ark could. So they kind of killed two birds with one stone, and it has worked out in the sense that Armstead has been a very beneficial player for the 49ers, and they were able to get a first-round pick out of it. We'll see if Kinlaw turns out to be a player, but I just think that because the 49ers didn't trade him, they're going to figure out a way to make this work. I think actually the A.J. Brown deal makes it easier for them to sign Deebo now, because there's something that's situated there. Something that was negotiated with this same agent for a player that is in the realm of what Deebo was looking for and asking for as well. So I think there's numbers there. Now the 49ers just need to fill in the pieces. And, we've seen, all of a sudden social media matters when Deebo's liking things and his brother's posting 49ers stuff again. And now all of a sudden, hey, this is good news. But when we were talking about the other stuff, it was we're idiots for paying attention to social media. But all signs point to Deebo comes back, and we're a big, happy 49er family once again.
Well, Suneil, I will tell you this. I've never said that you're an idiot for any of any of that stuff, because you want to know what? I didn't pay any attention to the social media stuff. I've been saying all along that he was going to come back. I've also been saying all along that I thought it was about money, and I still think it's about money. If they give him the money that he wants, he's going to be here. If they don't give him the money he wants, he's not going to show up. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. At the end of the day, he could say whatever he wants, but he's going to go where he's going to get paid, and the 49ers are going to pay him. It's just a matter of time. And it's got to be a little, just, I think last week I sang Patience on here. I'm not going to break out into song again today because just not feeling it. But, it's just, I've said all along I felt like Deebo was going to be here. I'll let everybody else get into the drama of what he tweeted and what he didn't tweet kind of stuff.
Can I give you my conspiracy theory?
Oh my gosh.
So I had this conspiracy theory. So in my eyes, Deebo probably, so obviously all the drama, everything was surrounded around Deebo or whatnot. But I think Deebo, out of the receivers that were on their agents list, Deebo was the most happy with the team that he was in with the 49ers. He likes the role. He likes being the star on the team. He loves his teammates. He obviously has a big role as far as leadership with the team as well. So he goes out and demands the trade or does all the drama or whatever it is, so that it puts the rest of the league on notice. So a guy like AJ Brown could actually get traded, get his money. Maybe a DK now is starting to do stuff to get his money. And then when all the dust settles and all that kind of stuff, Deebo signs back with the 49ers. Everything's all smiles and Hallmark cards. And it was all just a ploy to bait and switch so that AJ Brown got his deal, DK Metcalf gets his deal, and all the while, the roller coaster that it was, Shanahan, Lynch, Deebo come out and say, "Fooled you guys. We all knew he was going to get signed the same way we signed all our other all our other extensions in training camp after training camp, and we're still going to make him one of the highest paid players."
Yeah, I can't really argue with you a whole lot. That's not a bad comparison. That's not a bad conspiracy theory at all. It's interesting in that the wide receivers that are represented by Torrey Dandy all have moved on to new locations this season, right? As far as the ones that have complained, a number of them, DK Metcalf and Deebo are the two exceptions, right? But the other guys have the ones.
Yeah, I forgot Hollywood Brown was one of his guys too that got traded on. So
yeah, so there's something fishy going on there with that, with maybe the way that Deebo's representation is handling it. But I like your thing. It isn't that far away from a lot. One of the things that I've been thinking is that Deebo Samuel's agent being the guy represents three guys that are looking for big deals. Deebo Samuel needs to kind of make sure that he helps set that market, maybe with the deal that he signs, or like you said, creating drama for everybody else. And I don't think you're that far off. There definitely could be some to that. So good job, Suneil. I'm not gonna. That wasn't too QAnon of you.
Sometimes, hey, even a broken clock's right 2 times a day. So.
Hey, yeah, they could say every once in a while a squirrel gets the nut too, right?
Yep, a blind squirrel could still get that nut. Yep.
Yeah, every once in a while.
And me, and when it comes to acorns, I'm somebody that will try one or two.
You and Javon Kinlaw, you guys have the interesting diet stuff going on over there. But the other thing I want to say really quick, and I didn't get into this earlier when we were talking about I want to get your opinion on this. When we're talking about the rookies, I sent out a tweet a little bit before we went on the show about how the 49er coaching staff last year pretty much had the patience of a toddler when it came to dealing with the rookie class. And I wanted to see what your opinion on that. And when I said that, when I put that out, I wasn't thinking about the fact that they held off on Trey Lance. That was the right decision. I was going more towards Diamador Lenore starting games at the beginning of the season, and then we never hear from the guy again. He just went missing. He was totally MIA. A guy like Jalen Moore starting games early in the season, middle of the season, and then just completely vanishing from the roster over the second half of the year and in week 18. A rookie like Trey Sermon, who I have some interesting numbers on him that I'll share another day. He just completely falls off the map. And, these guys go out there, and when I was talking about not having patience, it was more about letting these guys go out, and as soon as they make a mistake, pulling them out, and just never seen them again.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but I also think that once again it goes back to the confidence things that I was talking about. I think this regime just truly knows what it is right now, and they're getting it down to kind of like a science, Jack. And what I mean by that is these rookies aren't expected to be big impact type players when they first get drafted. I think they're looking 2 years, 3 years down the line, and they're developing a culture. They're developing a system where these guys' mentalities, these guys' work ethic, their attention to detail, all of these types of things are being brought into the light. So I don't even think a guy like Mitchell would have got as much run as he did if it wasn't for Mostert's injury, right? We probably wouldn't even be able to see Mitchell for as good as we think he is now if it wasn't for Mostert going down. I think they would have slow played him as well. And I think that's just the new mentality of these guys. They've drafted so well, and they have such depth in starters at all these different positions that these rookies, they have a level where these rookies don't need to go out and be impact players from day one, and they could basically coach them hard and be like, look, you have to earn your spot on this field. And I think that's going to bode well for a lot of these guys moving forward, because you saw a guy like Brandon Ayuk bring more intensity into his blocking game because they were, slow playing him. And you see a guy like Juwan Jennings, who's all effort to make his roster spot here. And I think we'll start to see a very good Trey Sermon next year. Good Lenore, good Ambry Thomas, that are coming with a different mindset where they know, hey, if I play bad, I'm going to be yanked. So let me work harder. Let me take more, pay more attention to detail, play smarter. And at the end of the day, if it helps with the development of these guys, it's only going to make the team better. So I kind of like it, to be honest, Jack.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and there is something to that, and hopefully we see that, those hard teaching lessons play out with these guys being able to move forward and, make big plays and be players for the 49ers down the road. So we'll see how it works out. It was a good show. I know you got to get going because you have another one, but anything coming up on your own channels anytime soon?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be on with my little brother Rohan tomorrow at 7 on So Real Sports Talk. We're going to be going over the draft and just more topics. I'm going on with Jesse right after this on Last Second Sports. And I think on Friday, I'm going on with CG Ruthless on his channel Friday night. So stay tuned for that. And I'm in talks with Ezra Gray, who is looking for a position with the team right now. He went undrafted, but he's a running back that should be on a roster sometime this week. Next week, I'm planning on interviewing him on my channel sometime as well to kind of talk about his experience through the draft and what he's focused on. So stay tuned for that. Should be a lot of good stuff happening over the next couple of weeks.
There you go. So everybody get over to Suneil's channel if you're not already subscribed. It sounds like he's got some good stuff going on, and it's always fun over here. Swan Song coming in at the last minute tells us that it's going to be Trey Lance, 30-plus TDs, 10 INTs, 4,000 passing yards, 500 rushing yards with 5 touchdowns rushing. Woo, boy.
Woo! That sounds like MVP type numbers.
Yeah. I mean, no, that's okay because I'm not that far off. I have Lance over at 30-plus. I think 30-something touchdown passes, I said, about 10, 11, 12, 13 interceptions, a little over 4,000 yards passing, and I didn't get into the running side of it. So we're not that far off, Swan. I like that. And then 49ers Breakdown, if you want to get in touch with me, just hit me up in the comment section over here, and we can go back and forth on YouTube, or get yourself over to foreigners.pressdemocrat.com and check it out. And there was a new article that went up today about Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers possibly getting burned with that whole deal if they don't watch out. Here you go. Get over there to Suneil and make sure you subscribe to his channel. And while you're here, click that subscribe button, hit the like button. Make sure you hit that bell notification so that you never miss any of the shows. And then also, if you could, like Suneil was pointing down there, get the 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Make that a favorite on your taskbar so that you can check it out on a daily basis. Really appreciate everybody that joined. Great comments, a lot of fun. Suneil, I appreciate you making the time like you always do on Tuesday night. It was a lot of fun talking to you, like always.
Absolutely, brother.
And I will be back hopefully on Thursday night with Jesse for the Hammer and Nail show. We haven't been able to do it the last couple of weeks because of different things getting in the way. So hopefully we'll be able to get together on Thursday night and break down the draft together as well. So take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Go Warriors, go Giants. Obviously, go Niners. Take care, everybody.